My last year at MIT, I got into patents. I was interested in starting a company. I had never had a business course. Still haven't. But MIT started what they called independent activities period, where there was a lot of pressure during the Vietnam War. Students were upset, and so they decided that they would take the entire month of January and make it an independent period where you can take any course you want to without grades, just to take the pressure off and let you do what you wanted to do. But one of the things they offered during that period of time was a seminar series called Development of the Enterprises. And a guy named Richard Morris organized it. Mr. Morris had a company called American Vacuum Company and had patented freeze-dried coffee and frozen orange juice. So he was an entrepreneur and well off. And the real beneficial thing he did with these, he had 6 entrepreneurs to speak over that 4-week period. And he told them, you come in and tell your war stories for 30 minutes. That's what you'll want to do.
Yeah.
But the last 30 minutes, you've got to give 10 ways to achieve success or avoid failure. And 2 of the entrepreneurs had gone bankrupt, and they were at it again, trying to get started. 2 had gone public and were very successful. And 2 had just raised their money and were getting ready to start seeing if they could really do it or not.
Yeah.
And one of those 2 was Amar Bose. And he was just starting at Bose Acoustics. Turned out he was on my master's committee as well.
Oh, okay.
And so after I left Tech and went back to UK, I would call him on occasions and tell him, I'm trying to raise money, trying to price my stock. Does this sound right? Or, I'm trying to get some money out of a bank down here. They won't talk to me. Would I be able to bank this deal in Boston? And in some cases, he'd say, you should be able to bank it here, and if they won't bank it for you, I can introduce you to somebody up here that will bank it. Or that's pretty risky stuff. You're probably going to have to sell some stock, for some other condition, and because the banks probably wouldn't bank that even up here in Boston. So
yeah.
But that was what really helped me. But the side effect of that was that the last day, a gentleman came in and attended the very last session. I forget who the speaker was, and when it was over, he came up to me and he said, I noticed you took some pretty extensive notes during this time, and would you mind to go to lunch and just kind of tell me what's been going on? Turns out his name was John Masuris, and he was a Rhodes Scholar. He had been in Cambridge, but had gotten tired of working in abstract mathematics. So he came back to MIT to get a job as a technician working with Project Mac, which was the artificial intelligence project. Just to get some hands-on experience with engineering. He and his college roommate, when they were freshmen, started a ceramic engine company because they felt from physics that they had studied that would be a very efficient engine. They raised $1 million as freshmen at Harvard, and it didn't make it. They hired Bill Lear of Learjet fame, his ceramist, and they made a run at it, but it didn't work. But John was able to take me down to Boston right there by the gold-domed Capitol building and have lunch with a guy named Goodhue, who was the lawyer who helped he and his friend raise that $1 million. And it was interesting to me because I figured, well, somebody invested in something, you went bankrupt, they're never going to speak to you again. But Mr. Goodhue was extremely pleased to see John, wanted to know how he was doing and so forth. He said, I wrote that. Yeah, so we wrote our investment off in you, last year, and we figured it wasn't going to go anywhere. Wished him luck, and it was just a very delightful meal. And that was a real revelation to me that there are investors who take risk and don't hold you responsible for the rest of your life if you don't make it. I lost track of John. Actually, one time he and I, his college roommate his sophomore year was William Randolph Hearst III. And known as Willie, and this was when Patty Hearst had been kidnapped, his cousin, and Willie was traveling around to keep from getting kidnapped himself. And John called me one night, and he said, Willie is in New York, and he wants to see your technology. he said, "You think your car can make it?" I had a '69 Dodge Coronet, so we drove to New York City, and I got my little 35 millimeter or Super 8 millimeter projector and took it into the Hearst building and made a pitch to Willie Hearst, and we didn't get anything out of it. It was I was far too ahead of the market for that, but it kept me going. It gave me a chance to expose my ideas to somebody. They didn't say you're crazy. They didn't say you shouldn't do this. They said this is eventually going to happen, and But then I lost track of John when I graduated until I'd been at DataBeam for a few years. So this was probably 8 or 10 years later. I opened up the Wall Street Journal one day, and in the second section, front page, there was one of these pencil-type caricatures of John Masuris. The headline said, "Gates says Masuris is one of the brightest people he's ever met." And so as I read the story, John had gone back to Cambridge and finished his Rhodes, and then came back and worked at IBM with a gentleman where they developed the RISC technology for computer chips. And then they started a company called MIPS Corporation, which is still a public company now and has done very, very well. But John had sold his interest in that and had started another company called MicroUnity. And MicroUnity was going to build the first digital set-top box that he's going to make his own chips using his technology. He built a semiconductor factory in Santa Clara, which nobody thought would make any sense. But Gates had put in $10 million personally. The fellow Malone, who was the big guy in cable TV, had put in $10 million. So he'd raised about $80 million from some heavy hitters. I called him that day and said, "I'm going to be in California in a few weeks. Let's have dinner," and we did. And he told me, he said, "Boy, I hope this works." He said, "I've really got some hot shots on this board," and it didn't work. He didn't make it. The market wasn't ready for that. And so again, I kind of lost track of him. About a year ago, I Googled him just to see if MicroUnity was still in business. And it turned out that he had just settled a suit with Sony because he gave back money to all the heavy-duty investors he had, but he kept a core software team together. And it turned out they had developed a lot of technology and gotten patent protection on it. Sony had used some of that in the PlayStation. Intel had used some of it in the Pentium chip. And so he got something like a $20 million settlement with Sony. And Intel had kind of decided to do a settlement with him rather than go through a trial because they saw that he had already won that first case. Yeah. And so Intel was going to pay him. So I haven't called him since then, but he was just one of the fascinating people that I met. That's kind of a serial entrepreneur, risk taker, bright as he could be. And that started by my attending that seminar. I got a chance to meet him and Bose. I met Bose, but I knew so much more about Bose after I heard him speak that when I saw him in the hallway, I had a lot more of a conversation I could have with him. And I could tell him what I was wanting to do.